Greetings. This is the midweek devotional for Wednesday, May 11th, 2022 for University United Methodist Church here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm John Fletcher. I'm a member here at University. Now, maybe you are coming to us because you're a member of University. Maybe you have just seen a few of our services in person or even online, or maybe you're just stumbling upon this video by accident. However you come here, welcome. We're glad you're tuning in. So, as I record this, it's been just over a week since we got the leaked first draft of the Supreme Court's decision that apparently will be overturning Roe versus Wade. And I don't know about you, but I've had some pretty tense conversations with others and with myself, and I've read a lot of them online. I feel a little transported back in time to my adolescence, the late 80s and early 90s in rural Oklahoma. That was during my era's sort of version of the culture wars. A host of contentious issues were the focus of conversation on TV and in my everyday life, not just abortion, but gay rights, sexual harassment, evolution, equality between men and women. I remember having conversations in church, debates in classrooms, long talks with friends and strangers about all of those issues. And that was the heyday also of the religious right. That is, like groups like the Moral Majority or the American Family Association. It was one of the times where Christianity, at least conservative and I should say mostly white Christianity in the US, aligned strongly around a single political party's platform. To be Christian came to mean not just affirming a set of beliefs about God and Jesus, but also asserting a particular stance about policy issues and preferred candidates. I remember it's here that I first heard people in my life and on television explain their political views with a religious preface. They would say something like, well, I'm a Christian, so, and then what usually followed that so was some affirmation of some conservative political position. So, like, well, I'm a Christian, so of course I'm against abortion in all cases, or I'm a Christian, so of course I'm opposed to homosexuality, or I'm against sex outside of marriage, I'm against big government, I'm against women serving leadership roles, I'm against teaching evolution, I'm against gun control, and then on the fringes of that, if you dug a little deeper, you could find some darker sorts of things like, I'm a Christian, so of course I see AIDS as God's punishment for gay people, or, I'm Christian, so of course I think that the government desegregating schools was a mistake. I mean, and of course, let me say up front, I do not mean that all Christians or even all conservative Christians believed every one of these things. It's just that during those days, thanks to some very well organized and well funded groups, an image of Christian cohered in everyone's minds so that people could assert their Christian identity as a way of signaling their political orientation. And I gotta say, the way that it was used so often, I remember it wasn't just signaling their orientation, it was also justifying their stances. Why are you against abortion? Well, I'm a Christian. Enough said. Or maybe if more needed to be said a little bit, they would say, well, I'm a Christian, so I believe in the Bible. And then that was it. That's all that needed to be said. Apparently, it was kind of a conversation stopper, right? What's weird then, looking back, is realizing how few of those issues really had anything to do with Christianity or the Bible. I mean, I'll grant there are some verses in the Bible about homosexual behavior or about power between genders, and we Christians have talked at length about those and continue to talk about them. But I got to tell you, there's nothing in the Christian Bible about science education in schools or about the proper interpretation of the Second Amendment or the proper size of government, or really there's not really much in there about abortion or about the question of when human personhood begins. And let me get this straight, these are all important issues. I have very strong beliefs about them, But none of those are part of our historic creeds. None of those have traditionally been part of what's understood to be Christian, and none of them are really central to the gospel story. They are add-ons. They came to be seen and felt as just naturally part of what it means to be Christian, even though in substance they're not especially or essentially religious. And as you can imagine, that sort of religious right version, that witness of a particular kind of conservative Christianity, it really jarred with a lot of us, particularly those of us who were Christian and, well, didn't believe in those things or believed differently than those things. I remember during those days, I tended to adopt a kind of automatic qualifier to my own self identification. I'm Christian, but I'm not that kind of Christian, I would say. Distancing myself from public figures and the televangelist politicians of my day became a reflex for me throughout high school and college. And I don't think it was just me who found this politicization of Christianity off-putting, distasteful. A lot of my generation, Gen X, we seem to have decided that this politicized Christianity was just not for us. It's here that a significant portion of the population just starts to become de-churched. They break up with organized Christianity shortly after high school, becoming, maybe spiritual but not religious, or atheist or agnostic, or maybe they just become a none of the above, no affiliation. And we see in generations after Generation X, the millennials and now Gen Z, this de-churching has only accelerated. Participation in Christian churches generally has declined drastically over the last few decades, and about a third of Gen Z now identifies as not having any religious identification at all. Even for me, I'm pretty liberal. I'm not that kind of Christian. That's a big change. I mean, I grew up in a world where someone could say, "Well, I'm Christian," and they could be pretty sure that the folk around them would understand what they meant politically and respect that as a sort of justification of a particular kind of coherent conservative Christianity. And that's just not the case any longer. Don't get me wrong, right? There is no question. Christianity remains the predominant religious political orientation in the US. Just ask anyone who is not Christian. Only one congressperson currently in the House or Senate identifies as religiously unaffiliated. And in fact, 88% of our congresspeople identify as Christian. And in fact, you could say that our national government is disproportionately Christian, much more Christian than the country they are to represent. Nevertheless, in the long term, the demographic writing is sort of on the wall. Christianity, at least the mostly white, mostly conservative Christianity of the 20th century, that is fading, destined to be replaced by a diverse, uh, pluralized smorgasbord of belief, non-belief positions. Christianity is moving from being the one religion above all to the one belief system among many. And that, I have to say, has been freeing and hopeful for a lot of people, especially those who felt threatened or marginalized by the religious right. And I'll include myself here. It is, I think, a good thing for me and other non-heterosexual people to live in a world that no longer calls for my being fired or arrested just because I'm gay because the Bible or a particular reading of the Bible condemns homosexuality. I think it's good that we're getting to a point that people don't have to worry about being Christian or the right kind of Christian in order to have their views heard and respected, or in order to be elected as a leader. In a plural society where lots of different people with different beliefs and faith positions have to live together, I think it's good that, well, because my scripture says so, just no longer works as a compelling argument. It's healthy for American Christians to have to adjust to life in a non-Christian America. Of course, not everyone thinks so, and that adjustment can be really hard. The fading of Christianity's cultural status is really scary and threatening for many people, especially those who are very happy with the way things were, don't see why things have to change. This kind of nostalgia for the good old days that were really only good for, a few people. That kind of nostalgia is dangerous, especially when mixed with religions like Christianity. I'll say that one of the things that has hurt my heart over the last week is seeing how many Christians are reveling in this kind of reactionary nostalgia. I'm watching how particularly conservative Christians longing for some good old days, in this case pre-Roe versus Wade, this nostalgia gets twisted into a kind of aggrieved entitlement and righteous indignation, fear or anger, two sort of narrative escapes from the reality of Christianity's waning influence. I mean, you can see the fear easily, right? On certain news channels and radio stations, websites, you can hear the loud, well-funded media industry that kind of seems to specialize in scaring conservative Christians, convincing them that they are under existential threat from what? Wokeness, critical race theory, trans people, scientists, and of course now people who are pro-choice. Those people, these stations tell them, these people aren't just different, they're dangerous. They hate you. They want to destroy you. That's why we need someone to fight for you. Someone like fill in the blank politician. Yeah, he's not perfect, but at least he fights. The other sort of narrative escape, subtler but no less false than fear, would be to create a story that casts old-time Christians as the fighters, the perfect superheroes, the white knights, saving especially innocent victims. And you see that, I think, a lot in this last week when you hear some people on the pro-life side talking about this decision. I owe this perspective, an insight about this side, to a Methodist pastor, Dave Barnhart from Alabama. A few years ago, he posted on Facebook this quote. I'm going to read it at length. He says, "The unborn are a convenient group of people to advocate for. They never make demands of you. They are morally uncomplicated, unlike the incarcerated, addicted, or the chronically poor. They don't resent your condescension or complain that you are not politically correct. Unlike widows, they don't ask you to question patriarchy. Unlike orphans, they don't need money, education, or childcare. Unlike aliens, they don't bring all that racial, cultural, and religious baggage that you dislike. They allow you to feel good about yourself without any work at creating or maintaining relationships. And when they are born, you can forget about them because they cease to be unborn. You can love the unborn and advocate for them without substantially challenging your own wealth, power, or privilege, without reimagining social structures, apologizing, or making reparations to anyone. They are, in short, the perfect people to love if you want to claim you love Jesus, but actually dislike people who breathe. Prisoners, immigrants, the sick, the poor, widows, orphans, all the groups that are especially mentioned in the Bible, they all get thrown under the bus for the unborn." Unquote. I think Pastor Barnhart, through these hard words, captures the easy appeal of a particular kind of thinly pro-life stance here. It's this kind of thin pro-life stance that I see manifest in politicians who are pushing right now for hyper-restrictive anti-abortion laws, all while they have resisted any programs that bolster child care, welfare, education, or healthcare generally. It's this kind of simplistic, supposedly Christian pro-life stance that founds laws that would prevent people from getting treated for ectopic pregnancies, or laws that would make miscarriages crime scenes. It's this kind of thinly pro-life stance that seems a lot more like someone writing themselves into a heroic melodrama rather than grappling with complicated realities. I want to be very clear here. I know that that kind of thinly pro-life stance does not describe all of pro-life people, right? I know there are many people, Christian and otherwise, who in a deep and good faith way genuinely and thoughtfully arrive at complex, nuanced pro-life positions. I also have to say that in love we disagree, they and I do. And just to talk for myself, I do not believe zygotes, embryos, and fetuses are persons with an absolute right to life. And I do think that abortion is life-saving health care. I don't believe this, however, because I'm a Christian. These beliefs don't flow from, well, I'm a Christian, so therefore I'm. No. I recognize that this is a complicated issue that people and Christians can, in good faith, disagree on. I confess I'm less certain that there can be a lot of good faith disagreement about the personhood of pregnant people. For me, respecting their personhood, their dignity of self, if I'm going to be secular, or seeing these people as beloved children of God, this means giving them the benefit of the doubt and affirming their own agency and ability to determine what is best for them and what happens to their bodies. Obviously, there's some disagreement between me and other people on this. And I should caution also that I think it's perfectly possible for pro-choice Christians like me to fall into narrative traps of fear and anger. I can, for instance, all too easily see people who disagree with me as inherently evil or nefarious or maybe just dull on the one hand. On the other hand, I can even cast myself into heroic melodrama with pregnant people as simplified, perfect, dare I say, infantilized victims for me to swoop in and save on the other. Reality is a lot more complicated than that. That doesn't mean that I don't take and defend and fight for political stands, but it means that I can't pass over the spiritual and community work of what that fight means simply by waving my hand and saying, well, I'm a Christian, so. I would say that, friends, this debate that we're having right now in the wake of this news from the Supreme Court, it's an opportunity for us as Christians to explore what it means to hold stances as one faith position among many in this community. Frankly, it's even an opportunity for those of us who are Christians in the church to recognize that, well, I'm a Christian, so can end in a lot of different legitimate ways. I would say that the only sort of constant that there needs to be, I'm a Christian, so, is that whatever we end that sentence with, we must say it with love. We must express it with love. Because as Corinthians says, if I have the most beautiful words ever, if I speak with the tongues of men and angels, but I don't have love, I'm nothing but a clanging cymbal. Friends, if Justice Alito's first draft decision is anything like the final majority decision of the Supreme Court, we in every state in this union are going to be having a lot of conversations. A lot of old style culture warish conversations, and not just about abortion, but about a whole bunch of other issues. And I pray that as we do so, we are able to do so with love and without making assumptions about what someone's Christianity does or does not say, or rather that someone has to have a Christian or a religious opinion at all to participate in this conversation. And that I hope that the world looks at how we Christians behave in these debates, and they say, see how they love one another. May it be so. Thank you.